Melissa, can you hear us okay? Oh, you're muted.
I don't want to catch you off guard. The issue about the USU SBU student allocation. Other day. Oh, yeah, long time no.
Sorry, we can't hear you, I guess. Can you hear us?
Yes.
There you are. Okay, we're good. I'm gonna mute this for a minute, just until everybody gets here.
Perfect.
Well, good afternoon, all. And for those of you in the Hollywood Squares, good afternoon. Glad to have you with us. It is 3:02, and I hereby call the July 31st, 2024 meeting to order. Opening items are the welcome. I hope you feel welcomed. Introductions. So where we start with, let's start with Shaylee.
Hi. How's everyone doing? I'm Shaylee Bryant. I am the chamber representative voting member of this board. And I'm with Edward Jones.
Wonderful. And we'll come back to you later on the agenda. Talk about the 2025 RCGs. Biga.
Hi, Biga Metzner Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission Director. I'm going to be muting my Hollywood Square in a little bit, but listening to the meeting. I just have some, just FYI, but hello all.
Wonderful. Thanks for listening in. Melissa?
Lisa Jeffers, voting member of the board community at large.
Wonderful. Thank you. Father Dave? Mayor Dave?
Yeah, well, whatever. Dave Sackerson, I'm on the board.
Chris Wilson, also member of the board.
Caitlin Myers, Executive Director of Moab Area Community Land Trust, here to provide a report today.
Wonderful.
Ben Federgill, Director of the Economic Development Department.
Mary McGann, I'm the commission's liaison, and I think I'm a voting member. No, I'm not. You're not. Okay. Can't keep track.
I'm not even
What's most important
But
is you were here.
And I
And
do count
it's-
as a quorum, part of the quorum, which
Yeah.
is interesting. Can't vote, but I'm part of the quorum.
Jasmine Duncan, member of this board, Mayor of Castle Valley.
Wonderful. I'm Forrest Rogers, Chair of this board and Director of your favorite museum. So, we have an interesting agenda. We have some items that will require some discussion. We included some materials in the packet, some of which have some errors in them. Those are my fault. That's what happens when you try to crank out a bunch of letters that sound the same. And so we'll point those out. And I believe I saw Rob Walker. He may join us at some point. We all know Rob from the Moab Community Childcare Program. So we're going to begin with Caitlin and her interim report for the Community Land Trust. One of the reasons we're having all of these this month is because that these reports are due on September 1st. And it's too late in August for our scheduled meeting in August to get them in front of the county commission. So to my errors in some of those letters, they will be corrected and we will have those ready to submit. And that will alleviate some of the pressures in August, especially as the staff is working forward. I wanted to mention how grateful I am to Alicia for her work in getting this packet together and for helping get us set up electronically. So, Caitlin, would you please, people have a copy of your report. And so you don't need to read it. You just need to give us the highlights and all the accomplishments today.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll just kind of parrot a lot of what's in the report, but for our ARCOG, we applied for pre-development funds to support the second phase of Arroyo Crossing, mostly spending the funds on pre-development work so that Mackle can be more prepared with our own finances to do the hard infrastructure. So we received our ARCOG funding in, I believe, May of this year. So I've had it for a couple of months. We have been in the process getting everything teed up so that we can start spending that money. So as of today, we have a contract in place to do civil engineering for that infrastructure. I'm waiting on getting a survey in place for surveying so we can start working on the actual pre-development work. We're also working on getting developers lined up. With this scope and something we talked about in our application, this area is directly adjacent to an 84-unit apartment project in phase 1. So we're working on both phase 2 and phase 1 concurrently. So we have an RFP out to select a development partner for that 84 unit tract. That will close next Friday so that we can start working with the development partner on that and figuring out how that project ties into infrastructure needs for phase 2. We've already signed a reservation agreement with Territorial Land Company to do 14 of the 32 units in that second phase. And have started some initial conversations with some of our current development partners for that area. So I think we're right on track with the timeline that we submitted with this grant. Kind of working through pre-development so that we can start doing actual design work in August. Our plan is still to break ground on this infrastructure, have all of this grant money spent on pre-development hopefully by March next year. We expect to spend it really quickly. Once we get our contracts in place, we'll start spending it down pretty quickly. And we'll have it done by next summer. It's kind of thing about development is it's a lot of hurry up and wait. So we're in one of those waiting periods. But yeah, definitely anticipate we're gonna start spending it in the next couple of weeks with our engineer. So happy to answer any questions about what we're doing specific to this or with Arroyo Crossing and Maple generally.
I guess just more generally, like what do you foresee as the timeline for when the next units will start actually being available and occupied by tenants, whether they're part of the phase 1 or phase 2?
Yeah, so we're still continuously on a rolling basis. We have 2 multifamily projects under construction. We have a 24 unit cottage project. That's gonna be low and moderate income rentals. I'm anticipating framing starts for those any day now and should be up for lease up by next spring at the latest. Similarly, Skyline Arch Apartments is a 32 unit low income housing tax credit project built by the Housing Authority. They're anticipating lease up to be May of next year, so it'll be about 56 units between those 2 projects by next spring. We are actually today, after this meeting, going back to the office, we're doing a training for our first 4 townhome owners that are gonna be built through self-help. We should be selling a 27 unit tract of townhomes to the Housing Authority and start horizontal construction and first 4 of those 27 units in the next few months. And then so for self-help, that usually is like a 6 to 8 month build process. Similarly, we closed on 11 self-help, 12 self-help units between community rebuilds and the Housing Authority. We closed on those in May. So anticipate that those homeowners will move in by the end of this year. So we are just like continuously, it's kind of a continuous move in. As of today, we have 45 occupied units. Territorial Land, so that's all happening. Territorial Land Company is still building twin homes, 2 to 4 units at a time. So we just had their next group of 2 move in at the beginning of this month. So it's ongoing. We're anticipating that their next group of 2 homeowners will close probably by the end of this month. We'll be on a 2 to 4 months.
So you said, you've got some rental units, low income rental, what's the price range?
So between the 2, it'll be a little bit different. For the cottages, it'll be, and I'd have to, that's
Just ballpark.
yeah, ballpark. I think it'll be about 1,600 for 1 bedroom, a little closer to like ballpark 1,900 for a 2 bedroom. With some slight variances between the 2 incomes, and then the Skyline will be it'll be up to very low income, de-restricted from 55% AMI and below, right? Yeah, and so those will be lower rents, lower income, probably in the like max of $600 to $700. Yeah, so full range.
Of the 45 units, do you know how much actual numbers of people that represents? It's like the census that gets into 45 units?
I don't, I could get that information for you. I can tell you our household sizes range from one person to like, I think our largest household out there is 7 people.
That might be a big number for us just to know.
Yeah,
Economic development.
yeah, I can definitely run that for you.
What sizes are those apartments?
They will range, for the cottages, the 1 bedroom is about 675 square feet. 2 bedroom is like 850, and then for Skyline, that will also be arranged, they'll have some 3 bedroom townhomes that are almost 2,000 square feet. Those are gonna be along Bonning's Way, kind of along the main road. And then back behind will be 2-story walk-up apartments. Those will be I'm not totally sure, but you know, kind of in the typical probably 400 to 650, 700 square foot, depending on the unit size.
Is that information available on your website?
It is not currently, I'll make a note to send all of this, the specifics of this kind of stuff.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shaylee, for that question. Any other questions? I have one final question then. What is a twin?
A twin home is, it's like a duplex.
Okay.
So it's two homes in one building. The difference between a duplex and a twin home is ownership. So duplex is 2 units on one parcel. Twin home is the property line goes through that shared wall in the
Okay.
middle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's like if a townhome is a series of any number of units in a block, a twin home is just 2.
Yeah, in reading this and having heard you speak, it sounds as though your work is sort of a land-based Tetris map.
Yes, it's a lot of timelines and a lot of different logistics to track all at once, but.
It's just like rolling.
If you guys ever get an opportunity to go have like one of the board members walk you through the neighborhood though, like it's pretty enlightening. It's really cool. Like I took a tour yesterday and it's pretty incredible what they're doing.
Thanks, yeah, happy to, if any of you at any time want to take a tour, I'd love to show you around. Cool.
No other questions or comments? If you turn to the page in front of the interim report, we have a motion. And it has to be corrected. So in the middle of the second line, instead of saying Moab Community Child Care's interim report, it should say the Moab Area Community Land Trust interim report. And I would look for a motion and a second to adopt this correspondence, which then goes to the commission and then on to GOEO.
I make a motion to accept the correspondence.
Thanks, Shaylee.
I second.
Thanks, Chris. It's been moved and seconded to approve both the interim report and the transmittal letter requesting commission authorization. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Motion passes. Congratulations on the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
The next on the agenda is Moab Community Child Care's 2024 final report. And Rob, most of us know you, so thanks for being here. But would you introduce the person sitting next to you?
Sure.
Who is,
We know her too.
we know her, but it doesn't.
This is Nikki Wilson. She is our Director of Child Care Operations, kind of like, me and her together kind of run everything. She does most all the childcare stuff. I kind of just do some paperwork and stuff and help with strategy. You know, so Nikki's been with us for almost 2 years probably now. And yeah, I mean, she manages our staff of 16 people, makes sure our 2 centers are open every day from 8 to 5, properly staffed, you know, she's, yeah, so anyways, I think you just said introduce, so I think I did that, but anyways, really happy to have her. And I wanted her to come in case you had any questions or, you know, she could expound on anything.
Wonderful. So you want to summarize the report? Or turn it over to Nikki?
Yeah, well, I want to, I guess, ask what the, so I can focus on any particular area you guys want. So a reminder, we presented here at the end of the April meeting, so end of April. We presented just an update on funds we'd used to date and the progress we had. In that report, I included kind of a rough outline of what we could do with a similar size grant in 2025.
Right.
And so now we'd like to have some, you know, to the extent, I know your guys' timeline is kind of coming up the next few months. We're hoping to kind of get a vote on a grant request. We could talk about what you are most interested in supporting or not supporting in 2025 for our planning purposes, because, you know, we're a little unique in nonprofits that we've only been really around for 2 years, and now we're $500,000 in annual sales and expenses. And as we talked about last presentation, we've made a lot of progress towards getting more self-sufficient financially with our tuition meeting our costs, but we're definitely not there yet, mostly because we do infant childcare, which is extremely cost intensive from a ratio perspective. So yeah, to kind of, you know, to keep us kind of on our trajectory, it's good to have some visibility, of course, you know, because each month our cash goes down. We just recently raised our tuition rates on families. It's a balance we kind of try to make. The rough goal is to kind of be break even with our centers by most likely middle to end of next year, depending on the staff, to see how things go, whether we need to raise rates again to do that, and then to use our grant funds, which would be more variable in the future, to help with affordability, which is the biggest issue and the most costly and the hardest issue to address that we're at. So I phrased our request when we mentioned it last in April. A lot of people, I feel like, weren't here at the meeting in April. But the idea being is more like a bridge funding for us, kind of like the way you would with the venture capital or startup investment, that like we're not at the point yet. This is much more of a business than a typical nonprofit, because the people we provide service to pay us for our service, and they pay us nearly all of the cost of that service. But yeah, having some visibility, like with assistance for our infant center, as well as our new preschool center, which we just opened up, which is not fully at capacity yet, as well as some other small programs that we want to do, would be awesome. And what else did I leave out there? Yeah, and then I want to also mention that the reason I asked for this meeting was we were in discussions with like why we want it to be on the agenda this month and not maybe next month or something. We were talking with the school districts in April. We talked about a plan to have a deal with the school district where they would put in money to the childcare costs of their employees, and we would match that. They put in $150 a month. We put in $150 a month. They could utilize dependent care flexible savings accounts, which are ways where employees can put money pre-tax and help save on the ultimate after-tax costs. And yeah, we wanted to make sure we had funding for that the following year to start, because they want to start that September 1st. Yesterday afternoon, I got a call. You know, you guys know there's been some turnover at the, you know, Taryn retired. There's a new superintendent, and so we met with him, and with the meeting, we realized that they hadn't run it by their like legal kind of counsel, everything like that. And so yeah, we got the news yesterday afternoon that they are not going to be able to do the program with us. Yeah, where is my? Trying to get my notes here. Yeah, so what they talked about was they have a non-discrimination audit they need to do, I think, every year. And the difficulty is it opens them to risk and liability if they offer a program for some people and not for everybody. They had surveyed the staff and everybody was fine with it, because it's not a large amount of money relative to their budget of $22 million a year. Sort of been 25,000 or something. But yeah, they said that right now they want to do something with childcare. They want to help out. There's possibility when they're looking to build a preschool that we could potentially, they could give us the Sunwall Grand Preschool and use that to expand a year from now or 2 years. But yeah, so I wanted to, so that, yeah, that was that was yesterday evening that I found that out. And if you look at in our grant proposal, the document that I attached, we talk a lot of things. At the very back of that report, we go through how we're going to spend the request for 2025, our grant funds. And 25,000 of the 85,000 have been for this program. I also mentioned at the very end, you know, if you guys, obviously, you know, not all nonprofits can spend more money to increase their mission. You know what I mean? In terms of like, you can't always like just get more outcome with more money in. We would obviously have a limit at some point as well. But to really properly do a tuition assistance program, you know, we have several $100,000 that we could absorb each year and like help 200 people afford childcare better. So I mentioned that one thing the board had talked about was you want to do tuition assistance. You want to have programs to help families that are struggling. Maybe I'll turn over to Nikki in a minute, because one thing we've noticed in our 2 years of operation is that you know, most of our families probably make $120,000, $140,000 like median income, extremely high relative to the county averages. That was very surprising to me. The other thing that's been surprising is that a lot of families aren't able to qualify for the federal subsidies for childcare, even though they seem like they should be able to qualify, due to things like their income is, if it's a self-employed income or if there's tips, it can be difficult. So, you know, that was surprising. So we had this missing middle, which you guys have probably heard this term before, where you make too much to qualify for the federal subsidies, but not enough to be in a good shape financially to afford the product. Childcare is a very expensive product, just like housing. It takes a lot of people's income to get it because of all the staffing required to provide quality product. So yeah, what I'd like to do would be to, if you guys, you know, trust us and or we can come back to me more. We want to create a program that uses that money for tuition assistance that we would manage. The rough outline of it would be something like partial childcare assistance for missing middle income working families. And the goal would be to bring new people into the childcare system that are using kind of like informal care arrangements. The majority of people with children, I believe, in Grant County are in informal care arrangements with a relative, or they're bringing them to their work and they're just hoping that their work is okay with it. I mean, even the aquatic center just lets them kind of have an infant there, you know. That's obviously not great for anybody involved in terms of like for the kids or for the parents there. You can provide a much higher quality environment, much more social interaction for the kids. That's going to prepare them for kindergarten and better outcomes later in life. So the idea is to, if we can help encourage people to, you know, kind of make that financial decision to invest in their child. And we can make that easier by reducing the cost slightly. That'll lead to good outcomes. More people in childcare will mean more money for childcare providers. Instead of subsidizing them in other ways, making the pie bigger for everybody. And then also, of course, workforce availability improvements, and then economic outcomes for kids later in life, because they do better socially, they're prepared for school, you do better at school, you get a better job, you get more money. There's lots of data around all that. And what I mentioned is that the childcare kind of thing, imagine it as like a flywheel or something where it almost works on its own. People can almost afford childcare. Some people certainly can't. Like I mentioned to you, they're certainly higher income people in our town, and that's kind of what's happening nationwide with private childcare. Is costs are significantly higher than what we charge. They're $2,000, $2,500 a month often. But for us, the thought was that for a small subsidy per person, we could make the person would be able to then afford the rest of it. So for instance, if childcare is $1,000 a month, if we helped someone with $200 a month, then that could be the difference between them putting the $800 to the table. And so that's like, you know, efficient use of the $200 would be the thought. The program details, we would have to I would have to get approval from the board of Moab Community Child Care on. But and we could talk about this in terms of what you guys, if you're interested in what I'm talking about at all, I think you are. We can flesh out some of the details. The main ones would be things like, my thoughts would be that I want this to probably start with, this could only be for new families to childcare, not for existing people that are currently getting childcare. It could be for requirement for they need to be working, or there needs to be a, disability, an active disability. We would pay the money directly to the provider. So, it'd be kind of like a pilot program, which, I would love for, we have a number of very wealthy people in this town. Feel like, keep hearing of more and more that move here. And I'd like to create something beautiful and exciting that people want to continue and support, as opposed to taking a business standpoint on this and just say, well, we just have to raise our prices and that's all it's going to be. We're going to provide this small service. So I think it could be a really cost efficient way to, add a lot more people to the workforce, get better outcomes for everybody. It allows people to think differently about their careers, getting more childcare. Sorry, I talked a lot more than I thought. Maybe just I'll let Nikki underline that point about what she's seen from, because she's in the front lines of people calling the center and trying to talk about whether they'll go with us for childcare or someone else. So.
Yeah, I think mostly what I'm noticing is we're getting a lot of calls, a lot of interest, because we are one of only a couple centers in town versus in-home daycares, which means our ratios are higher, staff to children, which parents really like, especially with the younger kids. But I am getting a lot of calls, and when we tell them, the pricing, it's like, oh, I can't afford that, well, that's too much. So they end up going to somewhere that they can afford. And we have people, higher income families that are coming in that are getting that high quality childcare, and that missing middle or lower income that don't qualify for the state subsidy. Like Rob said, they're having to make other arrangements to go with someone who they wouldn't necessarily go with, because they do still have to work. And so we're just in this weird, situation right now where we want to help families as much as we can, but even like just our rate, it's high for what we provide, and it's worth it. I mean, we have such an amazing, staff, and we have an amazing program that we do, but, we're just kind of hitting a wall with that right now.
And can I just add a little bit, just so you guys know, our rates, which you just raised, are still below what our costs are. If we can, we're trying to add some more kids in the mix, keeping our ratio staffing. It's all like the balancing act. We have, 6 staff on at all times for, our 2 centers combined. The other thing was that this program, I didn't mention, the program we'd want to do would be for all providers in town. So it'd be if a provider has someone call them and they want childcare with them, this program, we administer a program. So it wouldn't just be for like our center.
If I want to be sure I'm clear on this, so looking at the budget,
Sure.
85,000.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that rather than have the Grand County School District offer the tuition program, Moab Community Childcare would manage it.
Yeah, we were going to co-manage the program, and what the plan was going to be was, that 25,000 would represent like 14, 15 staff members, $150 a month, $1,800 a year. That works out to like 25 grand.
Okay.
So the details so now they're not at the table. They're not putting any money into this. We were going to put in money to this, which we were going to ask you guys to, because your money is putting into this. But we're not gonna we don't want that to, this is definitely like, as I think about the things I'm excited about, we've added availability, we've added high quality care. We've helped Sago Lily, they're gonna be like quadrupling their capacity. They're a part-time center coming up now. It's a really high quality program. But the hardest thing is like, affordability.
Right.
So I'd like to start something, and then we could kind of continue to try to fundraise, which we've gotten, it's very difficult to get money from people that don't know you, noticed.
Yep.
And we've gotten, I don't even know, 10 to 15 grant rejections, and maybe like 2 or 3 or the smaller ones that we've gotten. So I'm an impatient person. I'm like, let's do this now. Like, people need help now. We could obviously do it in 5 years as we grow, but it's like we could start this with a smaller amount of money, I think, get it going and see if we get momentum with it. And we could administer it, and I think it'd be an exciting thing. And it's like a public-private partnership. The idea. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So I think it sounds great, and it sounds like exactly what we need in our community, in terms of hitting the affordability side of things. I think that it's clear the case that this is economic development for our community. It brings more people to the workforce. It prepares children to participate in our community in more productive ways in the future. My only concern or question, and you've already addressed it partly, is making sure, like, I think we should fund this year. But my concern is what happens next year, right?
Sure.
Like, it's cool to run a program like this for 1 year, but that's not what I want to see happen, right? I don't think it's what you want to see happen. We want to see this be a program that has financial sustainability. And so, I mean, you're talking about using this as a pilot, fundraising off it, and I think that makes a ton of sense. I guess my sort of like comment question here would just be like, how can we make that a core part of this so that we really ensure that fundraising around this program to seek sustainability is happening? And I think you've proven a track record of moving towards financial sustainability for your program over time. So I have a lot of faith in you and the organization. It's just a matter of making sure that, I always think about it like grant money is to make things happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. It's not to sustain them, in short perpetuity, right? And so how can we ensure that that's like what this would look like?
Yeah, no, this is definitely, like, when I talk about sustainability in our organization and like, it's important, that relates to our centers. We're running our centers. We need to know that those are going to be open. And I thought we would have, it seems like, we got a lot of grant money, our organization start out and get everything going. And then I kind of was probably a little naive in that, we got some COVID money, which had rolled off, is rolling off now. That there'd be like a lot of other people coming to the plate being excited. I've had not one single person ever reach out to me personally, even all the articles that have been written about us as like, hey, would you want to take a check, contribute? And that was surprising. Yeah. I mean, we've also reached out to people. I guess what I mean is that it's been hard to kind of get that next level of like, you started it, but now like continue it and grow it from here. But also like, that's, so I want to make sure like belt and suspenders that we're covered with our centers, and those are going to be run break even. And that's what I've told our families. And it's like, it's difficult. Sorry, we're going to be raising our rates and we're not going to cut these other things. This is what we're going to provide. The tuition assistance will always be a program that will need to be funded by grants, or there's also our tourist care, which we're starting, which we're kind of limited with administrative capacity to kind of really do that, because it involves like daily intervention with all these individual customers as opposed to like one person for multiple years. So no, this would definitely be like, there's the grant request of 85,000, majority of that would be sort of like, a lot of that are infant center support on there. For instance, like 25,000, that's like to help us get to break even to cover costs. The tuition assistance program would be like piloting a new program that we then hope to raise more money from. And that will be variable each year, and we can decide how much we give families based on that. And it might not work. We might have to at some point not continue that, because again, I don't want to have to. We can talk about it, but it's not your guys' interest, this board, to kind of continually fund things forever. It's a small budget. You want to pilot things. So
Ben? Question on the pilot, is the school district the only one that's targeted with the pilot at this point?
So to get that pilot, school district is done, like with us for this childcare pilot. They're not comfortable like legally putting money into partial childcare expenses because of how that could be perceived by employees that are not currently wouldn't be getting that same benefit. There's a discrimination issue. I'd also reached out to like when I got the school district to initially preliminary say yes, I reached out to the hospital and the city and county as well.
City and county asked them as well.
Yeah, but I mean, those positions have turned, we could talk about it again and things, but it does seem like there are the same issues that the school district ran into. I think other people might run into as well.
If it's truly a legal issue, yeah, they would.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they're just using that as an excuse, then maybe not.
They're definitely not using it as an excuse, but I do think there might be some way around it, but clearly it exposes them to potential like a lawsuit or liability. The thought with tuition assistance and the other thing we have, which I didn't mention as well, like the program I mentioned is something that like we can do. Like I know we can do it. We don't need anybody else's help on it. I talked about it, would love to kind of partner with businesses and kind of leverage our money and to get them to put money into it too, do that. I've kind of like poked around and tried, we could put more effort into that before, because that would certainly be like a better thing to do. I just want to focus on like making an impact as quick as possible, and so
But in that vein, in that
Yeah.
support,
good look.
I understand that legal can make rules for a lot of things,
Yeah,
but it seems like with everything that we are doing, with our Trail to Tomorrow, with our, all these different initiatives, this is a program that the argument could very well also be that these programs create better students along the way, the outcome is worth the investment up front. So just that's why I was asking if on the pilot, is it limited to does it need to be grown and a bigger ask? So that's just the question.
or like, the school district is certainly cares about this, they're likely going to be building a preschool in front yard of HMK. Which, you know, is a big investment considering the funding for that on an ongoing basis is not provided by the federal government, the way it's your kindergarten. So I think clearly care about childcare and pre-K. You know, I think this was just a situation where there was a turnover with superintendents. It was like, what do we agree to? Like, do we really need to? It was like definitely like a not this, but like we'll look at other things. And I would mention to them like, yeah, like why can't we partner together when we're working on your mission or we're achieving things? So like there could be a possibility there, and we certainly could try to open this up first to, tuition assistance idea program, to incorporate, to give businesses a chance to access it as well. I think on a smaller scale, a lot of Moab is full of a lot of small businesses, and I think in some ways that would actually be easier than larger businesses, because what we found in the district is probably similar for another larger business where you can't just give one employee a benefit without potentially, it can be an issue, especially in the school district, it's a public entity.
Can I ask for a pause on this conversation?
Sure.
Because I think everyone agrees with Chris, this is something that's worth to the community. It's important to the future, the community's future. I'd like to come back to this in this meeting, after we, first of all, approve the final report for the 2024 grant to community childcare.
Okay.
The one that you submitted online to Sky, and that's been included in the packet.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so I'd like to act on that. And then I'd like to turn to Shaylee and Cassie to talk about and describe their interest in pursuing a Rural Counties grant for the business summit. At least that's the first word I had. Here we are in the latest we could be in July. I don't know what amount that the chamber would be looking for.
Sure.
But depending on that, and depending on a subsequent conversation about the possibility of a market analysis, a needs analysis for a food and beverage incubator, if that's not something we would pursue, then it seems to me there's no reason that we should increase the request for the community childcare. As long as it's not coming at the expense of something else.
Sure.
Because there's a $200,000 cap for this grant cycle. So if you can hold with us.
Yes.
And let us pursue those conversations, because if you were awarded, say, 40,000 instead of 25, you could bank some of that for the next cycle, for the next year, and that.
We could use it immediately, pretty much.
Well, if you use, and
we could
that's
use it
up
very
to you all in terms of your fundraising effort, because if you say this is our pilot year.
I see what you mean.
And we've
like-
already
like-
got to start on the second
Correct.
year.
Yes.
From a fundraising perspective, that's an advantage.
Yeah.
So if you're all okay with that, and I don't see any nods or shaking of the head, so we're gonna go ahead and do that, okay?
Yep.
So if you could stay with us.
Sure thing.
So Shaylee, may I turn to you and give us a verbal description of what you're thinking about for.
Of course, yeah, and I'm sorry I'm not in person today.
back to it. Thank you.
So I would say we have learned a lot taking this back over and our with the summit. And I think the way that we have it running this year, I think it's just gonna take off from here. We are definitely combating some bad tastes from last year. People didn't love the summit last year. So we're definitely combating some of that, but we'll talk a little bit more about the summit in a second, but I think we want to put it on again next year. I think we've learned so much this year. And Powerhouse has been such a great asset to us in the event planning space. But I really think, we could legitimately stick with the original grant amount. I think it was about 18.5 was what we asked for from last year's grant for the summit. Between ticket sales and sponsors, it should be that should still be a sufficient amount. And I'm hoping that after this cycle that it becomes a more sustainable event. But this year we're definitely proving to people that it's going to be an event they actually enjoy and that it's worth the cost, the time, the commitment. So we would want to put this on again next year. And the other part is we learned a lot with the business trainings. We got a lot of feedback about what people have liked. What we have felt like is we have a lot of experts right in our business community here that we don't necessarily need to be bringing in, super costly speakers and trainers. And so I don't think we need as big of an ask in that arena to continue to do these business trainings that are free of charge to the entire community. I think we can utilize the talents that are right within our community, maybe have one big training that comes from outside the community. Really the biggest draw is as long as we can feed them. But I think we can gain sponsors and we can, work on it in that way. So I mean, Cass, what would you feel like is a good number to put on those quarterly trainings for next year when you've been looking at the budget for the grant?
So my experience has been the past couple of months that with the quarterly trainings, most people want to do it as low of a cost as possible for the chamber. And so they are I have the person that's doing it in September, she's just asking for $6 per person for supplies, and she's not even charging for her talent. And so I think that that's kind of what we're running into with these quarterly trainings. And the monthly trainings, I'm with Shaylee. I think if we can utilize our community members, I think that would be much more helpful. So I really think probably around 5,000 total for those quarterly trainings would make sure that we could feed everyone. And if we did need to get supplies, and then maybe instead of making them free to the community, maybe they are just $15 per person or something like that. That way they can put a little skin in the game and assure their attendance to these two, which I think is always helpful.
Yeah, because we do have people sign up and just not show up. So that we have a ton of food. So we've learned a lot. So I would say our total ask of these two things would be about 25,000. That covers admin costs as well.
So 20,000 would cover the quarterly trainings. And then how much for the summit?
So 18,000 for the summit and a little between 5 to 7 for the quarterly trainings to cover some of the admin costs.
Chris is already calculating what that total is.
Five total.
Shirley, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So and this kind of applies in some ways to both the trainings and the summit, though the answer and the logic might be different. But I mean, I guess it seems to me like the goal, I understand the goal of financial sustainability for it, and ticket sales are the way to get there.
Sorry, Melissa and I are not frozen, but everyone else seems to be frozen.
Ticket sale price to cover it, right? Whereas if you could get more people in the door at a smaller ticket sale price.
Actually, the sustainability of the event comes more from the sponsors than from the ticket sales.
So
the ticket sales help, but the majority of the money we get is actually from the sponsors of the event.
I mean, I just wonder it would be worth trying, and I leave this to your guys' expertise, but if it would be worth trying to charge less for tickets and see if that could make it a more valuable resource for the community. And
Well, so that's what I wanted to talk about.
if funding
with
is
the
what's
summit.
required to do that, that's something that we could consider helping you fund.
Mhm. Well, and I actually think, so last year we had a ton of sponsors and then it was such a negatively, people did not love it. And so some of those sponsors are kind of sitting back on their heels going, well, prove that this is going to be a good event again. We still have a good amount of sponsorships this year, but I think if we just blow this out of the water this year, that we're really not going to need a ton of funding next year, that we could even potentially give some of it back, or just make it even that better of an event. We did lower the ticket cost to $69, and we actually even decided yesterday as a chamber that we are wanting to invite people that we feel like are going to be, a huge asset in these discussions that, like, I want this board to come free of charge. I'll give you guys promo codes, but we need some community involvement. And if the cost of the ticket is the issue, which doesn't seem to be the issue when people are talking to me, they're not telling me it's the money. It's honestly about the content. Is this going to be worth my time? And so we have a little bit to prove after last year's event. And so for me, I agree with you wholeheartely, Chris. Like the more people in the door, the more impact this event's going to have, because my hope is that we have, county council or county commissioners there, that we have city council people there, that we have our mayor there, because these are some very strong discussions that we are facilitating in this event that are going to make, hopefully, people feel heard, and that can be taken back to the community as a whole and say, this is what our businesses are saying. And it is about everything. It's not just tourism based. And so facilitating those discussions and helping our business community feel heard is really our goal here. We have some amazing speakers coming, but most of it is the speakers are going to be facilitating discussions, and they're going to, they're educated speakers that are wanting to hear what our business community actually feels and what they're wanting to see change. But we can't, that doesn't do us any good if we don't have the participation from, our government side and from our departments and boards and nonprofits. And so I agree, we definitely need to get more people there. So if there's anyone at all that you're like, they should be there, let me reach out to them, send their information to me. I'll reach out, I'll get them a promo code so they don't have to pay for the cost of the ticket. There's going to be breakfast and lunch served. It's at Red Cliff, so it's a beautiful event. We're wanting to have this really be strong so that hopefully it is self-sustaining and we have strong sponsors going forward.
Well,
Shaylee, if I could add one thing.
Sorry,
I would
just
say that the reason we're able to lower the ticket prices is because of the grant from this board. So it has been really helpful, just to answer that question. And if something like this were to happen again, that would also make it helpful. But I'm with Shaylee. I'd really like this to be self-sustaining, get this as self-sustaining as quickly as possible.
Can I just add a small point on this, or I like what you guys are talking about this, and I think I've been to like the last 5 or 6 now. I'm trying to think when they started, and I did notice last year that there was a little less attendance. And I think that was because, if I remember correctly, the ticket price was noticeably higher, right, last year than the year before that. And what I've noticed was, I don't know, I did just turn 40, but I feel like I'm more a resident young person, in some of the rooms, and I feel like I was before, but I guess I'm older now.
I'm 40, man, you just jumped.
Yeah.
Wow.
The point is that what was noticeable was the younger people were missing last year. And a lot of those younger people, I run a nonprofit, so also it was nonprofit people. It was before maybe they were just given tickets or something. But I think what you said, having what you just mentioned about letting people reach out to you, Shaylee, and for certain individuals is great. But you could also do, either offer each nonprofit 1 or 2 their staff, or have a price for under 30 people, or 35-year-olds, or 30-year-olds and under. Could be $20 or something to get some it's just $70. It's certainly obviously a great deal for all of what you get. But I would just underline Chris's point and just get a little more money from EDAP to do that.
one of our concerns with making it just like a free event, because you know that would obviously be helpful, but we have found if you make something free completely, and then people don't have skin in the game and feel okay just standing it up. And so, you know, we had trainings that were completely booked and there was no more room for people to sign up, and then half the people didn't show up because they were free. And so we're combating that a little bit of like, you know, how do we get people buy into this emotionally, not even the financial buy-in, you know, just for them to say, because these discussions aren't going to be strong if we don't have people show up. They're going to fall on their face.
Not to have free, but to have it be, like you mentioned your quarterly business luncheons, even having them be $10 it's a lot, for those no-shows and things like that. It's helpful.
The only business summit I attended was in Price, and I was probably 41 at that time. It was 7 years ago. But it was like $40, and I felt like that was reasonable for what was there.
Okay, so Shaylee, could you give us the total dollar amount that would be in the request, both for the business summit and the quarterly trainings?
So I feel like if we asked for 25,000 total, that covers our admin costs as well as the actual cost of the trainings and the cost of the summit. I would be more than willing to say, you know, if for some reason we were to come out ahead on the business summit, because we're definitely not intending to make money here. We are trying to make it self-sustainable, but I'd be more than willing to say any leftovers we have that we could then, you know, give them to the next cycle, or potentially give them, if you guys want us to then possibly go to the community childcare. If we have overage, that would be like a donated portion to them or something like that. But I'm hoping we don't need 18,000 next year, because we have such a strong event this year that we have, you know, a lot of sponsors next year, because that's really where the event coverage comes from, is from those sponsors.
Okay, so I'm going to pencil in 25K as the probable target amount for rural county grant application from the chamber. Okay.
Yes.
And then I want to come back to community childcare, but in the meantime, Chris and Melissa and Ashley have been having some conversations about the item that's in the packet, which is the food and beverage incubator, and Melissa's raising her hand, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hi, no, I just have a question just because I want to clarify what I heard, and I can't remember her name because on the thing it just says Moab Chamber.
It's Cassie.
Cassie. Okay, perfect. Sorry, Cassie.
Oh, no worries.
What I heard Cassie say at first was $5K per quarter for the training, and then 18 for the summit. So I just want to clarify that I misheard that. So is it not 5K per quarter on the training and then 18 for?
No, it won't be 5K per quarter. It's 5K for the whole year of the quarterly trainings.
Okay. And you feel like that's gonna cover all? That seems really, it seems really low to me for the quarterly training, but that's just, certainly I'm never going to encourage someone to spend more money, but I just wanted to make sure that all the bases were covered. I guess maybe the reason why I asked the question and the place of concern that I come from is that if we go back historically to why we started talking about the quarterly trainings with the chamber, and maybe this has changed, but I just kind of want to go back and revisit the original conversations, is that we had been without our small business center for now going on about 5 years. And I'm hearing a lot, like, and I'm not popular in the community at all. I'm like totally off the grid, but I hear from probably at least 2 to 3 business owners per week saying, when is it going to be up and running? I need financial support. I need training in P&Ls. I need coaching on submitting this loan application. And so, you know, I keep reassuring them, like, that position is going to get backfilled. It's going to get backfilled. And when we first started initially talking about funding the chamber and these quarterly trainings, it was sort of under the guise of there would be this partnership with USU. And then we would be able to ramp up some of that support so that they would be able to give that one one-on-one individualized support, because we had a backlog of about 150 businesses that were waiting to be supported. But then maybe the chamber would be able to bring in some financial expertise, for example, and do those trainings to be able to help with P&Ls or loan readiness or some of those things. And I'm not suggesting that we take that route or that you expand or whatever. I just kind of wanted to go back to that original conversation, make sure that that was still something that we were thinking about. And if it was, that the budget that you were requesting, because sadly, you know, we only get a visit that once a year. So I just want to make sure that we are crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's before we miss the opportunity for the 2025 funding. And if we're not, like, we're totally good. I'm just asking.
I
No,
think those are fair things to say. Go ahead, Cassie.
Oh, no, you're fine, Shaylee. Go ahead.
No, I think that's super fair to say. We're having, it's interesting, like when we talk to people, they about coming and doing trainings, they're not necessarily charging us an arm and a leg because they want to come to Moab. And it actually promotes their business usually. So we're not finding that they're quite as expensive as we originally expected. And we also really want to just cater to what people need. And I think like P&L stuff, I think Larson's would do a training virtually free of charge. And really our cost is coming from buying lunch to get the buy-in from people or something like that. I know, Cass, do you feel differently? Do you feel?
No, very similar. I will tell you, so I have in November, Alan Christensen coming. He is a strategic planner. He is going to be our most expensive, and he's charging $2,500 for his entire thing. And so, I mean, if we did something like that, that's about half of what we were talking about. So that is something to take into consideration. However, everyone else has been like, we'll do it for you for free, except if you can, you know, get me a place to stay while I'm there, a room. And then we have
But
someone in the chamber that
if we maybe say like $2,500 a quarter in case we want to do some of these big ends, and then again, if we get the donated time, we could always say that this money then goes back into this fund to be able to go towards, you know, housing or childcare. So do we feel like maybe a $30,000 ask would give us a little bit more leeway?
It gives us some wiggle room.
Gives us a little bit more wiggle. We're trying to be super frugal here, Forrest, and so, you know, we want to make sure that we're utilizing this funding as well as we can. But I mean, I think Melissa has great points that if we find a really strong training, because we're constantly keeping our eyes out, that maybe costs $2,500 or $5,000, that we actually have the ability to go after it.
So the work that this board and the Economic Development Department do is almost always interrelated in one way or another, especially as we're pursuing rural county grants. So Melissa, you actually were helpful in cycling us back to the original decision that was made in the spring of 2023. And that was the decision to fund USU for 3 years. And then in May of 2023, we increased to $400,000 or $100,000 a year for the small business resource specialist based at USU. And then there was a false start with a hire, and the position has been vacant. And you're absolutely right. We started talking about the workshops and trainings that the chamber could organize and provide. And that's part of the funding they received in 2023 and 2024. There's another wrinkle to the SBDC. And and these are all connected, so I apologize if you're trying to track this web. But Ben had a meeting with the SBDC because they've been trying to move forward with their interviews with candidates for Moab. We had approved an amended budget. Ben had a conversation with them yesterday that brings us up to today. So if you give us that update from USU, then we can go back and consider reducing the proposed allocation from the chamber and then move on.
Okay, so.
Sounds good.
just in summary. And I'm newly back, so I'm catching up on the calendar, and there was a meeting with USU to discuss the interview process for their SBDC person. So attended, where they are is they think they have a viable candidate who is wanting to come take this role. They think it's a great fit. And they want to negotiate with this person that they would work, I believe 32 hours a week on the SBDC and then be given the other 8 hours a week to do their own personal contracting. At a higher rate than we talked about, which I pointed out some oversight issues that we would want to make sure that we were not just helping someone build a client book or coming to Moab to find another job, which they realize. The other thing is that I was not comfortable giving any support or pushback without this going in front of the economic, we used to call the EDAB, now the Economic Opportunity. And their concern is that they would like to move quickly so they can make an offer, but this requires I think that we need to have a discussion in this group to then take it forward to the commission, because the salary they're talking about now is $82,500, which pulls that sunset date forward a bit. And I asked them to do the math and tell me what this really means.
For less hours.
Yeah, what that pulls forward so that we don't just greenlight it. Let's see. So that's where we are. You know, they're in the mindset, which seems ironic that they want to move quickly because we've not moved quickly on any of this. So, but they now have a candidate on the line. So I think that that needs to be discussed. And Forrest and I talked this morning about how do we pull together correct type of meeting so that can be presented, and then this advisory board can then suggest if we are going to support or not support another amendment put in front of the commission.
In case, in my head, I'm working backwards from $200,000. And there's been some discussion about the food and beverage incubator idea that we want to have a conversation about and consider the possibility of pursuing a grant to do some market testing of that idea in the community. In terms of the Small Business Development Center, council to me, Commission Administration's council was have the advisory board review the proposed amended budget, send it to the commission for review and approval, because there are some changes to, as Ben said, it actually shortens the length of time for the business specialist on the job. SBDC leadership has been clear that that person's job is not to generate grants that support the position, that it's intended for one-on-one consultations. And so we're in a position now where we will likely have to have a special meeting in mid-August to have this board approve an amended budget, a budget amended from the one that's in the packet. And so we're going to amend the amendment, the proposed amendment. And that will require USU to provide an update budget, a timeline, and I would say we should ask for the resume of the prospective of the selected candidate. So I apologize, we're going around and around, but there is a method in this madness.
So if this candidate falls through, and they find another candidate and they need to amend based on what they want to offer that one. I mean, how many times do we do this?
That's a,
Or do we say, this is what we're offering, if you want to pay them more, you do it?
I think,
Yeah.
yes.
That's a good question, and one thing that they are so sure about this candidate that they wanted to send the formal rejections to the other candidates. And I did mention, I said, why don't you hold off, because if you get turned down, and then the discussion was, well, we think this candidate is in a different arena than the others, so we would probably reopen. So that's why this needs to go back to our board. I support you filling this role, but yeah, this needs to be done correctly.
So the other option would be if 82.5 is what we're committing to, and they hire and that candidate chooses not to accept the position, then they can go back and recruit again for the position
And maybe offer what we had already talked
and
about.
offer it a lower amount. And that difference gets rolled out into future years.
Well, it seems like the future years really weigh in on that.
Yeah. So Mary used a term earlier that I think you said muddling.
Muddy,
It-
clearly muddy.
It's muddily clear. So that's where we are. I'd like to move us along though, so we can cycle back. So we still have unfinished business. We have to approve the Community Child Care's 2024 final report. And then after talking about this food and beverage incubator concept, then we'll sort of put together what we think is the package moving forward. Make sense? Okay,
Okay.
On the.
let's move on.
So I think that letter might have had one sentence that was wonky too. Was that?
It was the first one.
No, there was another one that I
Okay.
didn't email you about.
Come on. You did email me.
About the first one, and then I read the whole packet.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So in the packet is the information that has been a source of conversation. We actually talked about this in the last two meetings, more in detail in the last meeting. And now we have some documents to reflect on. And Chris, are you gonna take the lead on that?
On the food incubator
Yeah.
conversation, I can help get it started. Melissa's been just as much a part of it as me,
Yeah.
so maybe she can follow up.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the conversations have just continued that we've had previously, and the sort of some of the folks that have volunteered to try to develop the concept further have had some additional conversations, but not that many. There's still a lot to go, a long way to go. I mean, I think the goal with it would be to be in a position in 2025 to put together potentially an RCOG grant or other requests for funding to get a food incubator / shared kitchen off the ground in Moab. To do that, you know, one of the things we've discussed is the possibility of doing some work this coming year to really assess needs and potential demand and resources in the community to make sure that what's designed is a good fit for Moab, basically, and really serves the needs of the community. So there's an idea floating around to potentially ask for some funding to help do a really good job with that this year, so that we're in a good position to do the research, to hold a couple community forums, basically, or like meetings with potential stakeholders, that kind of stuff. Do some strategic planning to be, best set up for a strong, project proposal and, plan, basically a business plan in the coming year. Let me just stop there and see if Melissa would like to say that better than me or add anything else.
Heck no, I thought you did a great job. I think that for me, the reason why I created the deck that I created and sent it to the Economic Development Department is because, obviously, the EDAB board, we're here to be as helpful as possible. I know that Colette Cox had said that if we moved forward, it would be better as a county initiative or as a nonprofit initiative. So for me, it kind of comes down to the economic development department. If they feel like it's something that would add to diversification or be a priority for their office, then I think it would be a really good idea to apply for some funds to do a feasibility study to kind of give that department and to give the county guidance. If the county doesn't feel like it's a benefit or an advantage to really do a feasibility study for, then I don't think it would be necessary to ask for those funds. So basically what I was doing is kind of putting together all the different parameters, the objectives, what some of the benefits would be to the county and to economic development so that the department can kind of look at that and say, wow, yeah, we could identify this as a priority for diversification or for development, or maybe this is something that's for a little bit further down the road. So yeah.
And I think for me, one of the questions that maybe we can just have a little bit of conversation now is like, and maybe Melissa has some ideas here too, but is if we were to make a budgetary request for this feasibility study or something like that, who would be administering it? And are we asking the economic development department to help administer that or to contract that out to someone? Like, you know, before we ask for money, I guess we need to be pretty clear on what we're asking money for. And I think we're still like, you know, this is a conversation that's been ongoing and there's some work still to do to like set up a more clear ask. But I think that's something worth having a little bit of discussion on before we decide to move forward with it.
Without giving away the plot, I think this ties into what the recommendations will be from the Trail to Tomorrow plan. So there, I would definitely attend the, one of the 3 tiers of going forward in a 5-year plan. So I would urge that we all attend and listen closely because I would imagine there's traction here with what's in some of those suggestions.
Like it seems to me also, it's just like, if we are gonna need to figure out, do we hire someone? Get the money to hire someone to do this, or is this one of the departments in the county have the bandwidth to take it on now? My gut feeling is no. Yeah. I mean, I think we're too short-handed. We're right now in a real flux in so many ways, so I think it would be better to look at it towards having some contracting it out.
Yeah.
I have only one person, another person from the county that works here, but I think that's a pretty good assessment.
Having grown up in a family that was in one of these industries, it is tough for the people that are in this market to see subsidized entities that are put in place to become competition. So I think we need to be very sensitive on our approach that we are truly an incubator that maybe supports our local businesses versus creates a subsidized competitor. So that's the one flag I would raise just out of our office as we try in that office to grow the pie, not pieces of the pie, which we get caught in catch-22s all the time with things we're doing. But I would just raise that as the one very sensitive thing that we would want to be very careful.
This could also be a resource for existing businesses though.
Absolutely.
I mean, what happens if you have things go down? You need a freezer, you need space. I mean, it could be a resource.
I absolutely, and it's also to become a test environment for someone that actually wants to go then to the SBDC and talk about starting their restaurant or their catering company. I mean, I don't know, but it does seem like it. Well, when I need childcare, the big people that are doing need their children taken care of, so.
I mean, one of the things that I heard really clearly from you, Ben, right there, because what you just said makes a ton of sense, is that when we're doing work to identify demand, it'd be really important to not only reach out to and learn from people who have failed in starting up food businesses, are still in that startup phase and hear what they need, but also to go to the existing food businesses here and understand what their needs would be and see whether something like this could help support them as well. Because we need it to be something that broad community buy-in for, especially if it's to have public backing that we think is really important for the stability of a center like this.
Do we have a number that right now we would know what that number is?
For a feasibility study. Melissa, what do you think?
It depends if the department wants to hire someone or, bring someone on, and it depends on how deeply that you want to go into the feasibility. It kind of feels like it may be even premature to do a rural county grant ask for a feasibility study. Because to Chris's point, if you're not sure if you want to identify a hire or if you'd like to contract that out, or how deeply you'd like to go, then it might even be premature to put a number on a feasibility study. But I don't know. I mean, honestly, Ben, it's your department. Depends on how much of a priority that you think it is. I'm happy to volunteer my time, and I'm, here to help however I can. I've done a lot of research. I have identified funding. So depending on if it's the county that wants to do it, if they want to do it as part of a public-private partnership with a nonprofit, I've got a few different routes that we can go, and I'm happy to share all of that information. So I just want to make sure that I'm serving as a resource. If anybody has questions, if they need my help, I'm happy to do whatever. If the county wants to take that on and do a contractor or a contract position to be able to research that and roll that under the Tomorrow Project, then that would be something that, Ben, you might have a good idea of what the ask might be.
Oh, all right, go ahead, Ben, if you have a response to that.
I have a response that I don't think I can give yet because, as many of you know, our department is changing its structure quite a bit, and we have the opportunity to maybe restructure a couple roles. I'll tell you that one of the things is attending TTRAs and a lot of these other DMO workshops. They all have economic impact analysts. So maybe down the road, this is something that we could just do in-house, but we need to, that is me putting a cart way in front of the horse, but and that requires restructuring a job description and then going in front of the commission, but that might be, because this does not seem like 80 hours a week of due diligence to figure out. This seems like a pretty easy back of the napkin model to build.
Or at least that a lot of it can be done in-house, to the point that the legwork works up to, do we really need a contractor? And then we have a better idea of what we need from the contractor, or to put it out for a bid.
Because right now, we're just talking about feasibility, not buying hardwares and
Right.
kitchen.
Well, it's definitely not that, but I do think that feasibility is one way of thinking about it. I mean, I would also, the way I would envision a process like this is that this would be building up the sort of community support and stakeholder buy-in for a project. So it would be, it would include not just sort of like running some numbers to see if the business model adds up, but rather also engaging the community in a process so that if we do move forward with it, we know that it fits the needs of the community and we know that there's buy-in from the community for a project like this. So there'd be sort of a social dimension to the work that's needed to be done in prep for a project like this.
Would this be a project that would be appropriate for phase one for Lisa and I to work together to come up with the model and then go consult the user groups that we've met through Trail to Tomorrow and the other to see if there was buy-in and take this off the grant list right now, since we don't have a hard ask, but that we go and do the due diligence front end together, and because I would be willing to volunteer my time to do that.
And I think we also, like from our last meeting, group of a couple other folks on the board who have volunteered to offer their time to help do that as well. So, the one thing when do we need to put forward the numbers to the commission for the rural county grant this year? Like, do we need to make a motion today on all this stuff, or do we have another?
We should make a motion today.
Okay.
But we don't have to. We would have to schedule an emergency meeting.
Yeah.
And
Just doable.
Which is
Did we adjust our August meeting for the county's meeting? I feel like somehow August meeting was gonna be like at the Grand Center because it needed to be at an earlier date. Did I
I,
pick that up somewhere else?
maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not.
On the calendar, it's gonna be the grand,
all the
but I
same.
do sort of. I know what you're remembering.
Yeah.
It's a place for retired folks. Yeah, it's not a convention center. I can't answer that. I can't have it there.
Okay.
Well, we can't have it there. We're gonna have to have it outside.
Yeah.
Well, if we need to move forward, I mean, I think I would agree that we're not quite ready. We don't have an ask right now.
We don't have.
Ready.
We're
If
trying to
we,
figure
if
out.
we had another month, maybe we could get to that point, but you know, that's okay. We can, I think we have a lot of people that are willing to volunteer to help make it happen
And that
we'll
sounds
make it
great.
happen anyway.
If you and Elisa are willing to do some of that, along with the rest of the.
Ashley's been involved in the conversations as well.
Yeah. I mean, do you mind if I say, add a little tidbit?
Go ahead.
Thought for you guys? I mean, one thing that when we started out that was helpful is we had some round tables, we like bought pizza, you know? And so I think like, I don't know, maybe we don't need to actually have land for it, but I think Ben talked about, you don't wanna like upset people or have people like this to hear what's happening. And you could invite all these different people to the table and they could talk about how potentially, you know, you'll get a lot of ideas from all that. Yeah, so maybe you wanna put a budget for like having a few of those, like
Or just have a potluck,
food. And
because these are obviously people who are into food.
You're also, you also don't need money. That's also true. Yeah, you're right. You could probably use, you can use existing, you know, staff time and. But I mean, yeah, okay, that's what I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly sort of the path that
That's a
I
really
would
good
envision.
point.
Okay, so we're clear on that.
Well,
Unanimous.
I volunteer by it. Does Lisa, does she agree with that?
I don't know where she went.
Okay, I just want to talk for you.
Yeah, but I think we have a group of people that, based on prior meetings, that agreed to volunteer our time to help move this forward and try to get us in a position for 2025.
Yeah, it clearly would be a great resource to have in the community for a number of businesses. And girlfriend has a flower shop and she has limited fridge space, you know, like it's sporadic. A lot of people do flowers. Just even that alone, like there's a lot of it, but I'm sure they can use fridge, freezer and prep space. Yep. Figuring out how to like, who will run it.
Yeah, this- Yeah, this sentence too. Read that sentence.
I know myself, like,
I follow.
let's be on support.
Is your girlfriend's flower shop the one by the old pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay, deep breath. We've gone through our discussion about the food and beverage incubator concept. We're gonna leave that to a working team that includes Melissa, Chris, Ashley, and Ben. And they'll determine the time frame for how we move forward. Make sense? So let's go back to our business. We suspended the conversation about the community childcare's $85,000 request for the 2025 grant cycle. We suspended that to talk about the chamber's request, which I'm gonna just estimate as $40,000, splitting the 30 and the 50, and if it's not all spent, it rolls over to the following or subsequent year. And then for and right now, that's about $125,000. Give or take, that total. Others can do the math faster and better than I can. There's a $200,000 pot of money that's available to us. If we're not gonna if we're not gonna pursue the kitchen, the culinary kitchen, or then our commercial kitchen, or whatever we're gonna call that, the food and beverage incubator, we've got 125,000 or so in solid projects. We don't want to leave money sitting in the grant pot at the state. So a couple of options would be to increase the allocation for both the chamber and Moab Community Childcare. For both of them, we could put some stipulations on them, recognizing they're the recipients, so they get to make decisions. So for example, we could allocate more to community childcare, but say this is a 2-year, you're getting this award. Our preference and goal would be that you use this for over 2 years and, you know, hold to your preference, which is new clients.
I'm not sure.
Are we able to do that
We're
with
able to
this
do
grant?
that for us. Like, I don't, we might, but I
Don't
don't
we
think
have a
we need
time
to.
we have to spend this?
Yeah,
And-
we personally, we wouldn't, that wouldn't like, that wouldn't be something we would need. Like, for instance, the ask that we have, the tuition assistance is a pot that we have 25,000 allocated to. We could really, that could be significantly higher. We could still really allocate that well over 12 months.
Okay,
The other things are kind of maxed out. There's only so much, like our staff training costs, like we don't.
right.
But that can be very large, but I think the idea of having that be like a pilot for that program. 12 months is a lot, and again, like I mentioned to you before, the other support that we're having is to bridge us to profitability, so. Yeah, like, I mean. That wouldn't be a similar request like the following 2026. You obviously guys can think is best with the money, but we wouldn't, it's not like we need the extra year. That's a challenge for the grant requirement.
I just throw it out there as a question mark, just
It's-
whether or
it's
not,
an
like, it's a
important-
collective
Look,
question.
I
that's
do
all.
think there is a timeline, because I think when we gave you your grant, we said, can you have this all done and reported by July so that you would qualify?
That's not.
I would say.
With
that
our-
we have-
okay, yeah,
This is
our-
our-
So our organization
Guys,
has gotten this
there's
grant
something.
for like several years, like,
Yeah.
since a long time. And, I've had reporting that we've sent to different people over time. And there's never been a 12-month window. But when we wrote our 2024 report about how much we spent money, I mentioned, our target is by February. We're expecting the next grant would come in February 2025, based on the way the checks are written and timing. But that's never been a requirement. No one ever was like, you have to be by this time, or just for what that's worth. I mean,
So where you're at right now, like, and you're getting a lot of calls from people who would sign up if they could afford it. Do we have an idea of what they could pay? And then.
Well, it's
maybe
also
we have
other
an idea
places.
Of how much, that you would tuition for other places.
It's also other childcare
Yeah,
providers.
So how many, do you have an idea of, like, right now, with you and the other childcare providers, how many openings are available to be able to subsidize, or?
Yeah, roughly, and we could talk about that. The other thing which we can mention is, I think there is a case where, ideally, if there was sort of more unlimited money, that it would apply for people that are in existing childcare relationship, they're currently
Right,
paying
right.
for high quality childcare,
Right.
because just because you can afford high quality childcare today, doesn't mean you're like barely hanging
It's
on.
really extravagant.
Yeah, so like being able to make it like, like having that, so I mean, you include that's a large amount. There's, 150 people probably in full-time childcare programs in Moab, paid childcare programs, but that the bucket is maybe 600 kids under the age of 6, so there's more that are not in those programs. In terms of the like slack capacity or additional spots that could be enrolled, our center, we might have, I want to say we probably have like maybe 8 more for 2 centers combined. We just expanded, but if I go through in my head, it's dozens. It might be like there's 25 spots throughout the town or something like that. People leave town and move though. Yeah, the idea was just that we could, if there was a limited amount of money, 25,000, let's say, it makes sense to start with, what's the lowest hanging fruit, which is more workers in the economy. So let's get people that aren't currently, taking
Right.
advantage of this, that just had a new baby or something, or just moved to town, and they're like on the fence about it. So if you allocated more money to that program, you're right, that it might be difficult for us to allocate, let's say, $75,000 in a 12-month period to only new people.
Right.
We could, so I'd be certainly happy to, again, I'll have to run some of these details by the board about what our exact program will be to administer, what our rules will be, income levels of this and that. I know that's not beyond the scope of you guys, but I'd be certainly very happy to like have another meeting where we talk about like, you could help shape the program. I'd always sort of pitch to Ben, like this is a thing that would be, in an ideal world, the economic development department could have a thing that's like, here's how we're supporting housing, here's how we're supporting childcare. And they could design a program that we would administer, you know, and then Ben would be like, these are the rules, you know, or we want to incentivize this, and we'd be like, thank you for any money towards childcare that you provide. And we can tweak the program.
I think it might also be helpful, not necessarily for this board, because we understand what's going on. But for like, if you're looking for other funding for this in the future, to hear from some of these people who would bring their kids, if they could have the subsidy and have them write a letter and then be able to.
We would also want to get the
significant-
data for sure for this
Right.
program. Like when we do this, like we will not do this unless we will kind of have to be somewhat of a cavity search where it's like, we want your W-2s, you know, you
Right.
gotta verify your income. We want to see, okay, what job do you have before? Now what do you have? Because then we can tell that story to the state and everything. And really, yeah, Colette's always talked about how important that is.
Well, and that shows that we're adding to the economic development. If maybe they didn't have, weren't able to work more than a part-time job before, and now they're able to work a full-time job, and that will show if they're W-2s.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge expense, and as a result, a lot of people just don't do it and they will stay home, you know, or they find some unideal situation and they.
That's usually more the case, I think.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
are
go ahead.
finding that that's more the case that.
Because
kids are-
people still have to work.
Exactly, that children are being left with, you know,
Siblings.
siblings, that's a big one. You know, they're being left at home with like ring cameras on, you know, like stuff like that, which is not ideal, and that's like, we want to move away from that, excuse me. So I think been the biggest challenge for me is just, you know, watching this. And we do have existing families who are scraping by, making it work, you know, and I know I've spoken with other providers as well, that they have the same situation. They don't qualify for the subsidy, but they make just enough that they're expected to pay this tuition, and they both have to work, or one has to work, single mom, single dad, situation, and they're just scraping by. They don't have enough at the end of the month for other things, and you know, but they have to go to work. And then those people who are working in the service industry, you know, the restaurants, stuff like that, they don't qualify for subsidy because of the tip situation and that, so they're left kind of hanging there.
There should be a way to calculate that. There is for
It's
housing.
Well,
Yeah.
there is, but it's interesting. I'm no expert on this, but I've learned a lot about the DWS childcare subsidy. And for instance, like SNAP benefits, I read a statistic that it was like 85% of people that are income eligible, you know, would receive them. And the program, I want to say, is funded with $50 billion a year. Anywho, the childcare benefit is only 15% acceptance nationwide. So it's a block grant, so it's given to states and then they make extra stringent requirements. So there's like not enough money in the program to give everybody who technically is
Right.
eligible for it. So yeah.
So they make it very difficult.
Yeah,
Very
when I started Community Channel Care, when we got this going, I thought for sure almost all of our people would be DWS paid, because a family of four who makes under $85,000 should get nearly free childcare based on what they say. You know, we have 20% of our people maybe will get the subsidy, and in our town, we have about 60 people full-time childcare subsidy out of, like I said, 150 or something like that, even though the median income in our town for a family is like $50,000 or $60,000. So there's other things, and it's like a lot of people with self-employed income. And I mean, Lisa Roman lives in town and she's been helpful and like she does this DWS stuff. But yeah, all I know is like, if you want to give people money for a subsidy and you give them a bunch of forms to fill out and you give a bunch of limitations, you do not get full participation. Like it does
Yeah.
not.
Well, I think we all agree that this is a big deal. And I don't think there's a member of the board that just want to move from help you create some type of way to help, you know, our people have quality care. As a teacher of many years, there's a big difference between the kids that were set in front of a TV or given a video game to play while their mom cleans rooms. That happens. I've seen it. I know it. And the more we can assist people into getting quality care helps in so many ways. I mean, and so I don't know if that's a green light to go forward and try to figure out, and do we need to,
I think we have
read
to
it?
figure out amounts. as
So,
well.
yeah, I
Revenues.
think the question at this point, is how much
We could
can
really,
you absorb?
we can really put a lot to work on the tuition assistance. I think like the limited funds, like I mentioned, the new families to me made the most impact. We could have the timeline be something like 6 months, you know, you get 6 months of subsidy for a new family, then you gotta kind of get a new job, figure it out. But we could make that be a year, you know, we don't have to, I mean, if we had more, and also, like I said, I would like to open up to all families, the missing middle, so we pick a cap. You know, 120, 115,000 or whatever we would go through and verify that. And we'd require them to first apply for the federal subsidy. Long story short is like, I think we can make a credible case for that to work. And I'd be happy to like report on all that. You've got a lot of data. And we could even give you, you know, yeah, so I think like, no, there's, yeah.
You have to be
I-
careful with the expectations there too, though, because like you said, like,
Expectations of,
of the people, like, okay, so you have a single mom who would
Correct,
lose this
yes.
otherwise, and she's not gonna go get a better job. She's already working
Yeah.
full time.
Yeah.
And her kid is like with with the older brother or something, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't expect her in a year to go get a better job because
Yeah.
she already has a full-time job.
Right, right.
yeah, but my other thought was like, this might be, I mean, well, is that, you know, anything, you know, we compete against them deciding to buy a car, you know, we
Right.
compete against them deciding to buy a new TV or go to Disney World. And what we've noticed is a lot of people that start with us, we allow part-time rates. So they'll start with us and they'll say, well, I can only afford 1 day a week or 2 days a week. We're like, okay, it's fine. And I mean, everybody increases that once they see it and they're like, this is great. And they make it work financially. So what I meant was just like this, like amorphous idea of like, give it a try. Like, you're gonna like
Just to
it.
get them in there.
Like, maybe your bill is already fully tight. There's nothing else you can do. But a lot of people, it seems like, I feel like, you know,
The priorities, they say, oh,
yeah,
okay.
this is something I need to.
Well, you show 'em
Since we are discussing this, is there an opportunity, full disclosure, no, I'm not asking this. You said the infant care is more expensive. Is there an opportunity through this grant to percentage target some of that, that gives you an argument that helps with that number?
The infant care, so, yeah, so in the 85,000 ask, I think we have, what we do is we do a 10% wage subsidy at $25,000 being allocated to our infant center. I believe our infant center with our preschool, for our center for preschoolers, will get to break even, like on an ongoing basis, because like, you know, back to Jasmine's point, it's like, we can't just like show up one day and be like, sorry, we're closed, you know, like anymore, that would be like super depressing.
Yeah.
It's not like, we're not building the building, we're having this like ongoing thing that has to keep turning, and if it stops, it's like really a horrible thing. So we already have some of that for the subsidy for our center. Also, our center will also benefit from a tuition assistance, because we are one of the more expensive centers, given like the staff ratio. We have, you know, 4 people in there. A lot of places are not centers, they just have 1 person at their house. So, yeah, we benefit from that, and it would be, like I said, a cool pilot program that we would, you know, it'd be on us to try to continue it in the following years. I'm hoping at some point we'll have, you know, the federal, I mean, the Democrats win, you know, there's a chance, they always talk about universal pre-K, and it makes economic sense to do it. So at some point, this will all be paid for the way kindergarten is paid for. In the meantime, you know, we have to find other ways to do it, splitting everyone's cost, and like you guys are doing now. And you know, I want to get, you know, Daniel McNeil from Grand Elementary is on our board. He, you know, talked to me about how many years it took him to build up the grants. You know, and so we're only been around 2 years,
Right.
so.
It takes time.
Yeah, when he started, we were doing fundraisers. We were like,
Yeah.
doing-
Part of my thought is like going around these, you go to Power Dam, you go to these places that are beautiful, and you're like, people care about, you know, and so it's like, create something beautiful, do this thing, and then we can, hopefully there is money in this town, and that will go to like, let's continue this and make sure it doesn't stop. It's my optimistic.
You have to be, you're a champion for this.
Yeah.
And recognized for that. Chris, were you gonna ask a question or say something?
Well, the only thing I was gonna throw out there is, and this may be a big can of worms, and I'm happy to, if somebody wants to shoot it down right away, or I understand the possibility of that. But the other thing we've talked about is the SBDC and the timeline they're on and it getting crunched based on funding if they're at a higher salary amount. I mean, is that something we should consider putting a little bit of extra money towards this year?
I'm not shooting down what you say, because I thought the same thing, like, should we throw that in the mix? What I did tell USU guys, because they said, you know, the tough thing is coming into a job and knowing that it's sunsetted in 3 years, that you start looking for a job right away. My reply was, this position has been funded and vacant for quite a while. Why, the beauty is we have a 3-year sunset, the way it was set up, that gets someone in this role, and if it's going well, there'll be opportunities to go extend the funding or find other ways, but we're really kind of funding something that hasn't been successful if we put more money towards it. And I think they, of all people, need to prove value for a while, because that has been a blank canvas. So, but I was thinking the same, I was thinking the same thing, that was just my opinion on that one.
Yeah, okay.
Price. Yeah. I mean, I've been really frustrated with.
But I'm not.
No, I appreciate that. I was concerned about the same thing.
So we are at Melissa.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I'll be totally honest. I am so supportive of any direction because I feel like when we have a strategy in mind, I'm there to be a support. I'm not supportive of the USU approach. I have to be honest. I mean, at this point, I would rather take those funds and reallocate them to get that need met another way. Because to say that not only are we not going to have a full-time dedicated person to chew through the backlog of under service or no service at all for the past 5 years for the business community, which is what we're here to support, right? Economic diversification, economic development, economic growth, prosperity, opportunity. And for them to come back and say, number one, we're going to take a risk on someone who doesn't have housing here and doesn't live here yet. Number two, we're going to make the assumption that they're going to move here and be so overjoyed with our community that they're going to commit to that long term. Number three, we're going to not have them be full-time, but allow them to pursue their own agenda outside that for funding that was provided by the Economic Development Board for a shorter period of time and a shorter runway. I'm just not a huge fan. And I say that because just yesterday, I had one more business owner in the community that I don't know personally say, when did you say that was going to be up and running? Because we're a seasonal business. We weren't able to get the loan package put together for the equipment that we needed for this year. So now we've missed another season and we need that kind of support and help. So I just want to say on record, I'm not super supportive of that approach. And I am, like I said, I'm supportive of just about everything because I think you can make just about everything work. But I feel like with USU in that position, SBDC was always funded. They had the funding to be able to pay for that. They have federal funding available to them to be able to provide SBDC funding. What we did was give them grant money to be able to dig out of a hole for a desperate need that we had for our business community. It's really hard to justify that kind of an approach for me. Sorry, I mean, I would be more about doing something radical and saying to the chamber, can you manage it and hire 2 or 3 people to be able to help these people to put some funding packages together. But these are folks that don't have adequate financials, P&L financials, help support applying for commercial lending, that are doing all of the things that we're supposed to be supporting. And we've got folks who have funding available for other sources to be able to pay for that full-time resource. And they're still asking for, we want to bring someone in. We hope that it will work out. We want to reduce their hours. We want to give them a higher salary. And in the meantime, how long is that going to take when we have seasonally dependent business owners that are depending on that support? When would you even have that person in place? So I have to say, because if I don't, I'll regret it later. It's really hard for me to get on board and be supportive of their approach.
Well, and I have to agree. And one of my big questions coming from a financial standpoint is they've been sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, are we
For years.
earning interest? Are they earning interest on that? Like, what are they doing responsibly with that money? Or is it just sitting in their general fund, so to speak? Yeah, I've been really struggling with this hundreds of thousands. I think it's a great program. The SBDC is a great program. We can't keep someone or get someone in that role here. So
It's
what,
great if
you
it's
know, what,
functioning, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So how do we meet those needs in a different way? And do we go
I
back
don't know,
to
you know,
USU and say,
are you both familiar with the FBA? Because I found a lot of resources through them, and there's SCORE, which provides like tons of free webinars. And if we can point some of these people who you're getting like calls from towards some of these other resources in the meantime, there's a lot of stuff out there.
I honestly, I'm at a point where I would do it myself. Like I would love to do it. But what I will say is I don't want any of this to be misinterpreted as criticism, because it's not. What it is accountability. And I feel like accountability is a gift. So the times when we're the most effective, when we're the most impactful, is when we know that we've got some constraints and some time constraints and some resource constraints, and that we're accountable to the people who provided that funding. And I do feel like there have been so many, and it's nobody's fault. There have been staffing changes. USU has had so much change that accountability has been really difficult. But I've got to say, if it were just me deciding and we weren't a board, I would pull those funds back. I would come up with what the objectives were that we wanted to accomplish, and I would reallocate those funds before I would ever support the approach that they're proposing to take.
Sorry for opening a can of worms. I agree. I'm with you all. That all makes sense to me. I appreciate the perspective, and yeah, I'm not funding them this year.
I appreciate you opening that can of worms. That's good
No, it needs to
discussion.
be said.
Dave, you're still on the board, the advisory board. SBDC is pretty
We
much,
haven't had a meeting.
I'm sorry?
We haven't had a meeting for 6 months.
Okay.
I'm not real impressed.
And
What's going on up there?
And the SBDC is managed by, not by the academic side, it's by a different enterprise.
Yeah.
So, this was a very welcome cold shower, Chris and Melissa. I think this is going to require us to do some thinking, because what we're talking about is essentially clawing back money from USU, and any earnings on that money that it should be encumbered, and rethinking with Cassie and Shaylee, and perhaps with your help, Melissa, rethinking the allocation for this coming year. And then we will have to have an emergency meeting, probably the second full week of August, so we can get things on the commission's agenda for the August 20 meeting. But that gives us a week and a half or so to do some thinking about this, give Ben some time to consult with Melissa and Shaylee and Cassie to think about ways that we could invest with part of the Rural Counties grant for for 2025, while we work to claw back the money, if that's what we intend to do.
I believe we need to have this meeting before August 13th, because midnight, August 13th would be when we need to get it on the August 20th commission agenda.
Okay. Okay, so.
can we meet in, well, I guess next week? Can we meet next week?
Right, so, but first of all, Shaylee, let's not vote on this decision, because we have, it's a conversation that'll lead to decisions at the next meeting. Okay.
Go ahead.
One last thought, we're relieved of the timeline for Rob to get the agreement from the county, from the school district, because we're not going in that direction. And that's why we did it today. So then the next question is, in terms of the board, is there consensus that we should regroup, have some work done between now and the 13th, and rethink the chamber's request as part of this 2025 cycle, and look at increasing to a certain degree, to some as yet undetermined amount, the childcare submission. But
Call it Cox just Jimmy.
Hello, Colette.
Hi, everyone. So sorry for joining late. I'm actually on vacation this week, but I thought I'd jump on just to answer any questions you might have about the grant.
Your timing is impeccable.
Yeah, you just had your recap.
I'll try my best to give you a recap of the conversations we've had focused on the rural counties grant and some of the wrinkles that we've discussed that will require us to have an emergency meeting probably on or before August 13th, so that our recommendations can meet the council the following week. We've had two very good conversations about the proposal from Moab Community Childcare and their request for their application for the 2025 Rural Counties Grant. You may have seen that. You certainly know Rob's work and the work of the of Community Childcare. Our conversation has morphed into how much more can we give them or apply for in this coming cycle. We've also talked with the chamber about their request for support of their quarterly training events and their 2025 business summit. We've just had a conversation that has swayed this entire board in terms of our existing committed support to USU's Small Business Development Center. And I think you know the story of the fact that they had some false starts in recruiting for the business development specialist here in Moab. There's about 360,000, 350,000 that they have encumbered to fill that position. They've made some requests about increasing the compensation, which shortens the amount of time that that position would be funded through this allocation. We've come to the conclusion that we want to seriously rethink the relationship with the SBDC here in Moab and think more seriously about what we might be able to do in shifting many of the activities that the SBDC does and that's business specialist does to the chamber. I'm going to take a breath now. So that's where we are.
She fell off. Oh, there she is. Is that her?
That sounds like you've had some great discussion.
Man.
I always throw in my cautions for you. And I would just caution you to steer away from supplementing programs that should not need supplementation. Maybe more directing your funds towards programs that are emerging or building instead of trying to prop up programs that are lacking funding because of changes with leadership or program changes and things like that. The SBDC specifically, we're expect that program is under legislative review this year. So we're expecting to see some funding changes and programming changes statewide. So that maybe a piece of information you didn't know about that particular program.
And maybe can I add a little summary for Colette? I mean, we can follow up too or sorry. do you-
Is there more you want to add, Colette, about the SBDC?
Just that the what we call technical assistance or business advising is extremely important in our rural areas. We have organizations like the Women's Business Center of Utah that are doing it well. The SBDC in different parts of the state have had some inconsistencies. And then in some parts, they've had some wonderful, they've had a wonderful record. And so that's why the program's under legislative review. But it's at the heart of what's needed for our small businesses. And I think that the chambers always supplement and always do business advising on the side. And so, I think that again, is something that's needed in the community. So, but there's a difference between a temporary patch and like a full crop up. And we've had some similar requests on the southwest side of the state to prop up SBDC. And my personal advice is to steer away from that because it is a fully funded program. And they should be able to manage with their current budgets. And again, in light of statewide changes, I think that might be, again, just something to steer away from with your funding. It will stretch further in other areas.
So Forrest, what if me, Melissa, and Cassie get together and have put together a proposal for what we're talking about? Not only what we could do from a chamber's perspective by hiring someone to maybe create our own business development within our own community that is funded by our community, ran by our community. But it'll also have in the proposal like forward thinking of how this can become a self-sustaining program that like the county is not having to go after funding for every year. But Cassie and Melissa and I can get together and have something put together for the EDAB board by next week.
I think that's exactly what needs to be done. And you should feel free to ask any member of the board to participate who wants to contribute to that conversation.
Anybody want to help? I'll get you on this group text. I don't see any hands raising.
I will help by making a comment about my experience working for the Portland Business Alliance. When I was doing business recruiting for them, they actually had, it was a combination of the chamber, of the Portland Metro Chamber and the CEO's Council. And they actually had an economist or a labor economist or somebody who did economic analysis on staff who came from the chamber. So that might be a role that the chamber could play rather than Ben adding a staff position there, and that embeds that role right in the organization that's delivering a lot of the services.
Shaylee, yeah, I'd say, I'm happy to, I remember talking with Beth back in the day and when she was leaving and she was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, I don't want a real job. But I sort of have one now. But
you have more than a job, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the SBDC just for childcare business owners right now. But I've been actually talking with Wabi lately and trying to consult with them. I definitely feel like I could chip in a little with some, I taught a little course at USU like 4 or 5 years ago on P&L analysis and stuff. And yeah, like I'm very passionate about helping small businesses. I obviously can't do I'm not a full-time employee, but I'd be happy to like help maybe supplement if you say you hire someone and they are missing XYZ skill or a different experience here and there. Yeah, I think it's great that we need this. I mean, Beth was great and we haven't replaced that, and that was 5 years ago. So
question real quick to Colette. So one of the things we talked about before you got on is actually doing a clawback of the funds that we have already given to the SBDC since they have not fulfilled the use of that. Is that an acceptable thing for us to then say we're gonna be putting it towards basically the same use, but one that's actually gonna get used in the next year? Is that okay to do?
Yes, and especially if that's coming through your rural county grant, and that was going to be my advice is smaller projects that just need a little bit of money. I would say focus on those being use your rural county grant funds, that 200,000 for those smaller projects or smaller supplements, if you will. And then think about for the rural communities opportunity grant, that would need to be something that would really warrant asking for that larger sum of money that was a true project based. We almost anything that's supplementing incomes or something like that is usually weeded out before it even gets to the committee, to be honest. Like it just gets scored so low. So actual projects like building buildings, buying equipment, starting new programs, those are the types of things that we like to see for the grant application. And so, but I think, again, supplementing a program that's already fully funded is a little tricky, and I can have some sidebar conversations with anyone who's interested about some of the things that we've seen statewide. But yeah, so I think your discussion is right on point, and just but again, we don't want to see business owners go without that technical assistance. And I know the Women's Business Center does quite a few things, but we need more. So if the chamber is willing to step up, then that would be something. But again, with anything that would be ongoing, I would write the plan to be showing that it's a new plan, but you need money to start, but you've got a plan for sustainability.
And I think we
Perfect.
all are under the understanding that the USU money for that position didn't come from the rural county grant to begin with.
Right.
The money that they're sitting on did not come from the rural county grant.
Colette, that,
over to your diversification.
I think so.
right, Colette, the money allocated to the SBDC at USU actually came from the funds that had been allocated for diversification.
I remember
So
now.
Star grant.
When
Yeah.
that sunsetted, we distributed funds, and there was already a conversation about investing to fund it for 3 years. And in the middle of June of 2023, last year, we added a 4th year to that. So that's
Okay.
really not our rural county grant money. And
So it's probably gonna be a little bit of a sticky situation, because if we do take that back, I mean, that money can no longer be used for diversification, and probably is gonna need to go into a different pot, correct?
well,
There's
and
gonna
that,
need to be a conversation with the county lawyer about.
Yeah.
Others, an administrator,
We're not
all of
gonna
this
make that
before we're ready to
decision.
move forward, even us.
but those are conversations that we should have before we meet in a couple of weeks.
Well, in a couple of weeks, we need to be prepared to do a couple of things, I guess,
Right.
but first and foremost, to put it forward recommendations for the rural county grants.
Yeah.
Right,
Right?
That's
exactly.
our job.
And that, I mean, in this, whether that money is clawed back or not, SBDC doesn't really, we don't need to do
No,
that
that's an
in
administrative.
order to move forward
Right.
with the rural county grants for this year.
Yeah, that could all be part of the sort of the drama, the paper around the recommendations about the audit and things like that.
You think?
I think we should ask.
Well, no, this is a positive piece. Well, I mean, it's drama, but it's a positive piece. It's more money that they haven't spent that could be then reallocated to the general fund or do it in a way that, pay back the stuff.
We know basically what we've done is we thought we had to have an emergency meeting for something else. Now we know we need to have it. So,
Just all,
we just changed emergencies. Thank you, everybody.
Sort of the same.
But for
Chris.
Rob going forward, I mean, don't we, it seems to me what we'd like to ask of Rob, if you guys are in agreement, is for you to put together 2 updated budgets for us.
Yeah.
One updated just based on the changes with the school district, but at the level that you've already requested, like 82.5. And then another one at a more generous level, sort of at, and we might recommend something in between, but up to
With
what
more
you think would be
details
the
of what
max
you're
that
gonna do
you
with
could
it.
use effectively for economic development this coming year, so that we have that space to work with based on a budget.
Have we heard
Sure.
from anyone else with requests for this round?
No.
Yeah, and Colette, just to bring you up to speed, the school district yesterday afternoon told me that they're not gonna be able to fulfill what we initially agreed to. They hadn't reached out to the legal people. There's a new superintendent. Offering a childcare benefit for them, for their staff with kids would expose them potentially to some liability, and then they have to do what's it called? A fairness audit, I think, something like that each year. So they're like, we're really sorry. So yeah, I mentioned in the beginning that, we still want to do, Montpelier Child Care still wants to do tuition support. We're trying to think what the most efficient way to do that would be. So that was the conversation was on our line item of request. We had $25,000 allocated to that program with the school district, where we would put in $150 a month and they would put in $150, would be used the DCFSA plans. And now we're saying that we'll design a program to get the outcome that we want. That's just us, that we're running it. It'll be for all the childcare people in town. It'll focus on, new people coming into the childcare world. You're not currently using childcare to really hit the point home. That's going to be new workforce availability. And then they're talking, well, can you spend more money in that program? It's like, well, of course we can do more. It's such an expensive thing to work and subsidize, and we can pick, how we help that. And I can follow up with you to make sure that I design a program that, or we make an ask that the state will see as infrastructure. The idea would be that it would be like piloting a program with funding, and we'd show the benefit, and here's all the people we got to work and so forth, and here's the impact it had and the stories we collect, and then try to fundraise over the course of the next 12 months. So then keep that program going, as opposed to coming back to rural county grant following year.
Yeah, I would, let's talk offline so we don't keep the meeting held over anymore, but really, again, we want to focus on workforce development, some type of physical infrastructure or business recruitment, retention, or expansion. And so the workforce development piece definitely fits, but anything that goes to supplementing families, that's not a good fit. So yeah, we can talk about that and so you can bring something to the board here in a couple weeks that fits within those parameters.
Okay.
Wonderful. This has been a very good conversation, gone in different directions. We know that we're going to have a meeting in approximately 2 weeks so that we can take a formal action on the rural counties grant applications. We will then at the same time be able to approve the final report for Community Child Care's 2024 grant. We've already approved the interim report for the Community Land Trust. So for the most part, we've done what we needed to do today.
Do you have to approve the 2024 report from us?
No, we'll do that at the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll do that in there. So, Colette, thank you for joining us, and we hope that your new role is serving you well. And we'll look forward to meeting our new representative when the time comes. Melissa, thank you for the cold shower about the SBDC. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Sorry.
No, do not apologize. And describing accountability as a gift is exactly right. So we appreciate that. and I appreciate everyone else being here. Ben has one staff appointment to inform us about, and then we will be adjourned.
Yes, we've hired Nick Saletta as our Assistant Director of Marketing. And we'll look forward to bringing him to next meeting. Brings a wealth of good skills and just makes our office strong, which is good because we got a little weaker in the last couple of weeks because we lost Sky, who we are really missing. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did my best not to talk too much, sorry, guys.
We'll-